Open your eyes and smell the loosh, awakening to the dialectic of control to move toward freedom. What if parasitic controllers are commandeering the human mind through conventional, social, and even alternative media to bring about our current looming dystopian realities? Let's engage in a few minutes of practical skepticism, especially where the so-called truther community is concerned. If you're heavily into truthing, prepare to be triggered to learn that even truthtellers are telling lies. They don't necessarily realize that they're fibbing or part of a major problem. Truthing takes away people's energy from things they could and arguably should be doing, growing up spiritually and fortifying personal power. All the while, truthers and their followers are being fed upon by a psychic predator I call the Great Parasite. It's not all bad though, not all doom and gloom, especially when we learn to honor the predatory aspect of this so-called reality as a teacher. The Gnostic question of how people are parasitized mentally is of utmost importance for anyone truly desiring to break free. In this ancient worldview, the forces that prey on human awareness and mind control their prey are called archons. The energetic food people usually unknowingly provide them is sometimes referred to as loosh. We could also call it power, chi, prana, orgone, kundalini, mojo, mind, or even consciousness. So what actually happens as our consciousness is drained by etheric entities? We become less self-aware, less empowered, less ourselves. Minds are being wiped and personalities rewritten as the population's vital life force is siphoned off for other uses than our own. Everyone is being looshed to one degree or another by layers of tricky mind manipulation. We're talking about supremely clever parasites that have infiltrated not just our media and general discourse, but that communicate to people inside their own heads. Thus, people's allowed thoughts and behaviors are tightly controlled, remotely. This happens individually, but then individuals come together in groups. I define these groups who come together to be looshed collectively as cults. A cult can be as simple as a dysfunctional relationship, a cult of two. A cult can be a family, a small business venture, a team, a country, a continent, until finally you reach the world cult, the encompassing entity of all subcults lorded over by a spiritual adversary, the Great Parasite. Many think of this adversary as an artificial intelligence, but I suggest there's nothing artificial about it. In my view, it's absolutely natural, part of the dream world we inhabit even while waking. We've dreamed the adversary into existence, and it's up to us to dream it out of existence, or at the very least change our relationship to it in the here and now. Trauma in this situation can be a blockage, but it can also be an invitation to transcend and go beyond. Think of trauma as a double-edged sword. All the triggers and traumas being thrown at us are also invitations to aikido them, deflect them, use that energy for ourselves. It's absolutely possible to do this. We're touching on the essence of martial arts here. I'm not just speaking philosophically about using negative energy for one's own growth. I mean that we can literally take the energy and turn away only to stoke ourselves with it. We're here for a reason, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Our trials and tribulations are meant to awaken us to the vastness of our genuine nature as souls on a journey of human learning. The unpacking of human potential involves the cultivation of power, however you do it. Personal power is the gateway to exiting the world cult, to getting out of the so-called matrix. Like it or not, we're in a spiritual classroom. This existence is obviously a kind of test. The great English poet John Keats described this world as a veil of soul-making. Fellow Romantic writer William Wordsworth wrote about souls entering this world trailing clouds of glory. Our challenge is to learn to embody our own greatness in this confusing, distracting funhouse. This wouldn't be an easy task anywhere, but it's especially difficult in a world cult designed to keep people looking outside instead of inside. I used to think the current generation of truthers were much smarter than they are, but I keep waiting for them to figure out that they're playing a game that's rigged against them. They don't realize that the only way they can win is to stop playing. And the only way not to play is to go from the outside to the inside. Do the inner work, the shadow work. Take the inner journey. In the grand scheme of your spiritual evolution, whatever's going on in the external world simply doesn't matter. I'm not saying bad things aren't happening. I get it. This isn't my first rodeo. But I am saying you really don't have much control over anything except yourself. Get used to it. When people engage in serious activism, whether it's saving the earth, a ridiculous concept, or any other externally focused activities, all they're basically doing is engaging in narcissism. Me, I put my money where my mouth is. When I published my first book, Conscious Healing, I shared many thoughts on unity consciousness, the idea that we're all one. I hear people giving this concept lip service constantly, but does anyone ever follow through? Me, I take the idea of unity consciousness where it logically leads. If we're all one, it means there's one and only one consciousness here. We're having an illusory experience of separation. That's the nature of the classroom, and it implies that we're also our own adversary. We are the Great Parasite because we're all each other. In my novel Snooze, about harnessing the power of lucid dreams, people living in the dream world greet each other by saying, "I see myself in you." Consider that for a second. If everyone thought that way, what a wildly different world we'd be living in. Truthers tend to believe in reaching objective truth, generating real solutions, solving our collective problems, making things generally better. But none of these things will ever happen, of course. Certainly not on the stage of the world cult. Most of the population doesn't realize they're living in a functional matrix of sorts. One could include truthers in this large group, even though they often intellectually grasp the idea of reality as a kind of Tron-like game board. There's a much smaller group actively endeavoring to exit not just the world cult but the matrix itself. These who interest me are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, as Jack Kerouac might have described them. Meanwhile, truthers blindly help the Great Parasite spin its dystopian narratives in order to bring them about. It's not so much that the controllers are spellcasters, a common meme in conspiracy circles, as that they're psychically gifted at parasitizing people's ability to create reality through their own stories about it. Truthers are classic controlled opposition, limited hangouts knowingly or otherwise. To paraphrase Friedrich Nietzsche, truthers who stare too long into the darkness turn into the monsters they observe. This shot of truth enrages a lot of people, especially leaders of truther cults and their fanatical followers. And yet an endless number of dystopian doomsday scenarios are being pushed forward and galvanized by just such hive minds of truthers. To think that truthers are fundamentally different from the mainstream media is ludicrous. They're yin and yang, two sides of the same coin used by the duality cult to bifurcate minds and people into an ultimate synthesis of control. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This is the dialectical model of mind control happening in real time for anyone with eyes to see, and yet so few are willing to see it. Are you ready to open your eyes and plot your course to freedom? Only cult members fail to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. This video develops ideas from the controversial new book, The World Cult and You. Read or listen to it today with your free trial at solluckmansubstack.com.